podcast role. Welcome in.
Hello, you are listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast, a proud member of the Podcast Roll Network. Hello, Jamie.
Hello, Peter Stiepelman. How are you today?
I'm doing okay.
I'm glad. So, are you ready to talk about Mandy Traylor?
Yes, I am.
Tiny district.
Very small. She says at one point how small, and that is
200
really
and something.
Yeah, super. That's so interesting to me because I know I've said this before. I was a superintendent of a very large district for Missouri.
Yeah.
And so I had incredible levels of leaders who were doing lots of interesting and hard work that I never, ever had to think about. Mandy's got to think about it all. She's got to do it all. She has to set the tax rate. She has to think about the school calendar and convene that committee. They don't have collective bargaining in Texas, so she doesn't have to worry about that. But she has to think about the facilities. And so she was talking about, we got this new building, and then we had all these opportunities to do the forward strategic thinking that we needed to do. And obviously I don't want to get into that because our listeners, I want to invite them to experience it for the first time. I will say I was super impressed by how inclusive she was about bringing voices together and things like that.
Yeah.
And she had really good examples. So it wasn't that she just said, I did that. It was like, let me tell you how I did that.
This is like I said, tiny district outside of Houston, I believe, just outside of Houston. And it's her joke about being the very best superintendent and getting a lot of mileage out of it. I'm like, no joke.
No joke. I would be milking that all day. It's just like,
exactly.
Yeah. For our listeners, she is the superintendent of Veribest, Texas. That's the name of the town. And I totally geeked out before our conversation to be like, how did that name come about? So I did a deep dive into that. And then, of course, I asked her. And then I'm like, well, let me also tell you about some of the ways that I figured out a little bit more. But
as a country music super geek, I listen to a show that plays old radio shows, old country music radio shows. And there used to be a radio show that played out of Nashville called Mother's Best Flower, Hank Williams show that Hank Williams did for a few years, and sounds like exactly the same. Like all of these people, these companies with the very best, and this is the best. That was their entire marketing push, and then that becomes so. Mother's Best Flower becomes a Hank Williams radio show, and the very best mayonnaise becomes a town.
Yes, I invite everyone to listen to that. It's really cool. One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting, and I'm going to invoke our sponsor. She talked about like really bringing people together. And IXL, they talk about being data-driven, but they also say, do you actually bring people together to do that? And so in this conversation with Mandy Traylor, she reminds us that the strongest school systems are built through that strong vision and that real buy-in and the taking care of people. And I truly believe that's exactly what IXL, that's where they shine. They give leaders and teachers real-time insights. It's the reason why 96 out of 100 school districts, the top school districts are using, trusted by over 1 million teachers. If you want powerful data, you want personalized learning, you want real progress, visit IXL.com/imperfect to learn more. Jamie.
Nicely done, Peter.
Your smile is so funny when I read that.
I'm like, it's an ad.
You read that.
It's ad. You're doing a really good job, though. I love the way you're doing it, actually. To be honest, you're doing a great job. And you're getting smoother.
I'm getting better, right? I love to listen to like Mike Birbiglia, and I like to listen to Conan O'Brien. I like to listen to the Lonely Island guys who are from Berkeley.
I've never listened to that. Oh,
and,
really?
Yeah. Andy Samberg and all those guys from Saturday Night Live. They all went to Berkeley High together and then moved on to all their things. Their ad reads are hilarious to me. They clearly are like, we're being hired and we're just going to read it the way we want to read it. And they go on these tangents. You're like, wow, people are still going to pay you for that? So we're going to stay, stay within like the talking points, but I'm still inspired by them all.
I think we should just let's go and listen to Mandy Traylor. I would say if I'm as a listener, I would listen for her conversations about how inviting businesses in to help the district created other programming opportunities and thoughts that I thought were really unique and interesting. You both mentioned specific ones that are worth listening to. And then lastly, I think her after action review is pretty interesting. One that I don't think we've ever talked about before. I don't think we've talked about this kind of dilemma. And those are the things that stood out for me that I think if listeners are listening in, that'd be pretty interesting.
Well, let's get into it. You're listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. I'm Peter Stiepelman.
And I'm Jamie Almansan.
And we will see you on the other side.
See you then.
Today on An Imperfect Leader, Superintendent Mandy Traylor is our guest. Mandy is the superintendent of the very best independent school district in Veribest, Texas. Very best. There is really no better name for a community than the very best community. Mandy, welcome to An Imperfect Leader.
Thank you so much for having me. It is true. You are talking to the very best superintendent. I get a lot of mileage out of that, but
I have
name.
Yes, it is. You and I were introduced to one of the very best, I think, as well, an educator and a motivational speaker, Andrew Marotta, for which he will admit he's a whole lot of Marotta, but he's so good, isn't he?
He's wonderful. He came out to our district for a motivational back to school event, and he couldn't have been better for all of our staff. We all loved him.
I always leave conversations with him just feeling better. So I'm so glad that he's always mentoring me to say, if they want you, go. Just go. You're going to love the community that you get to be a part of. And so I think he truly models what he preaches. But
Yeah.
You now, my friend, are from Veribest. And you got to tell me, actually, can you tell me the history of how the community got that's name?
Yeah, I can a little bit. So a very long time ago, like pre-1875, a man named Isaac Mullins settled close to where we are now in Veribest. And we still have Mullins Crossing Road in our community, and we have the Mullins Cemetery and so forth. But around 1900 is when people started settling in the community. And around the 1920s, they needed a post office. So they applied. And unfortunately, there was already a Mullen, Texas, and you couldn't have Mullen, Texas and Mullins, Texas.
Confusion. It would be very
confusion. Yes, that one S. So they had a contest, and the contest was who can come up with the best name that has not been used, which I can't imagine in the 1920s there were that many, but that was the contest. And so there was a young lady, Sue, who went into a local grocery store. And at that time, Armour and Company had a brand of canned goods called the Veribest brand, spelled just like our town is. And they produced peanut butter, ox tongue, root beer, those kind of things, and mayonnaise. And then there was also another brand by a completely different company, and it was Norman's Veribest bread. Veribest spelled the same. So there's a little confusion. No one really knows if we were named after the mayonnaise or the bread, but Sue hit the nail on the head. That name had not been used, and she won.
It became the name. Unbelievable. Yeah. I looked it up, and it was Sue Rister. She saw a jar of Veribest mayonnaise, at least is what the Wikipedia source tells me.
Yes.
And I thought, how funny that the story of Veribest gets its name. And I find it amusing that a mayor was like, we need a post office. We can't use the existing name. Sue Rister, what should we call it?
It was
but
the
it's
winner.
nice to know. It was a competition.
Yeah.
When I was superintendent of schools, we had a sister city in Hakusan, Japan. And about 3 or 4 times I went to Japan, and I would typically give a presentation to its local Rotary. And we were establishing an exchange where our students would spend part of their summer in Hakusan and live with families, also go to school, and it was amazing. And so I thought it would be humorous to share with them our 4 high schools, the mascots from all the high schools. And so we had the Bulldog, and we had the Bruin, and we had the Spartan. And then our 4th high school, one of our comprehensive high schools, had the Kewpie as its mascot, like this naked baby, which you're in Texas. So, Friday night lights for us was big. I know it's massive in Texas, but like for us, you'd have this naked baby competing against other schools around Missouri. And so I thought that would be humorous to say, look, isn't this funny? Our mascot is this naked baby. But the number one mayonnaise in Japan is Kewpie mayonnaise. And so they were more confused about why we had named our mascot after their number one mayonnaise. So I thought a real affinity to you and Veribest for its mayonnaise connection.
That is hysterical. I learned something new. That's awesome.
Okay. I'm not sure if the mayor's leadership model, what it was back in the 1920s, it most certainly wasn't the one that you've been working to develop, which is implementing a strategic leadership model that I understand is in its second year. And I wonder if we could start by talking about that. Tell me a little bit about what prompted its development, its adoption, and maybe some of its notable improvements that you're already seeing based on implementing it.
Absolutely. I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
It was something that just fell in my lap. It was opportunity came knocking and I answered the door. I'm not sure how familiar you are with our district, but I have spent the last 4 years working on a major building project. And that was wrapping up and I'm still tying up some loose ends, but it was coming to a close. And I had just assembled my dream administrative team. We are strong. Everybody's in it to win it. And I couldn't have a better group of people. And so when this opportunity came knocking, I realized it's the perfect time. So in Texas, we have different regions, and each region has an educational service center. Ours is Region 15. And Region 15 approached me about a pilot program from our Texas Education Agency called Texas Strategic Leadership. And this pilot program actually had a board component. So it involved not just my stakeholders around the school, but it involved our school board as well. They worked day and night doing work that I don't even know if I could have done by myself. But this group of people came in. They helped me to put together and host a soft grand opening of my building before we moved in. And with the soft grand opening, we invited local businesses, and those local businesses came in to tell us pretty much what they look for in a graduate. What are they needing from students who graduate from Veribest High School? Then at our big grand opening where everyone was invited in, they came in and they surveyed the staff, anybody who was there, students. There were parent surveys. Each survey was separate based on the person taking the survey. And we had this large accumulation of data. They broke the data down for us and were able to tell us, hey, these are the things that are going great. These are qualities that people see as a valuable education. And all of that data broken apart, they worked with our teachers to develop goals. They worked with our school board to develop a strong vision. And they worked with my admin team to create our mission. So we now have a new building, a new team, and a new vision and mission with goals to run forward with. And it completely united us and made us stronger.
It sounds like one could say you stand on the shoulders of those who came before you. And so it's new, it's renewed, right? This renewed sense of purpose and promise, and the building itself is always a great motivator for what do we want to achieve together. I love this idea. You learn about strategic plans, and often the superintendent goes off and does the strategic plan with their internal stakeholders, and then they share it with the external stakeholders, and to some extent they present it to the board and say, will you adopt it as ours? And you're really speaking of this partnership with the TEA and doing it in a way that says, oh no, we're going to all take these steps together. We're going to, I love the soft opening. What a great opportunity to say, okay, let's talk with our board. Let's talk with some external stakeholders, as well as then bringing in and interviewing our internal folks to see if we're aligned and where do we have a common alignment, and then taking those steps forward together.
Yeah, and it really was exciting to see the data because there were a lot of commonalities across the board. And the fact that everyone had a part in it, everyone's bought in. Everyone knows that we created it together. It's not just something that they're being told to do. We created it together.
That is amazing. To what extent were children brought in to give their thoughts about their own futures and a portrait of a graduate?
There was a specific survey just for the students. And those were pretty comical because we are a small district. So 1A, we're pre-K through 12. 265 kids is what we averaged. So you could tell which one were the elementary kiddos, especially those fifth graders, because if it had to do with graduation, I'm only in fifth grade. Those were the responses that they were giving.
Oh, that's so funny. I imagine if there's an open-ended section, you're like, that's Gerald. Gerald, Like,
Yeah.
enough with you don't like the lunch. I got it.
Yes. So as I said before, I'm only in 5th grade. So you can learn as you go. And so if I ever do this again, which I hope I get to, I'll know. Maybe I need an elementary survey and a secondary survey.
Sure. It'd be interesting to bring back for those 5th graders when they're 10th and 11th graders is to bring them. So how have your opinions changed since you were 10?
Absolutely. Yes.
Our guest today is Mandy Traylor, the superintendent of the Veribest Independent School District in Veribest, Texas. In the leadership model that I use to advise others, there's a dimension, it's called collective aspiration. And inside that dimension, there's a term, compelling purpose, for which I feel like you've really spoken to. For those who are listening, a compelling purpose is really about coming together and asking that question of what do we want to create together? And knowing that you have really leveraged a compelling purpose when you completed that major building project and then used that as a tool or an impetus for having really important conversations about the profile of a graduate. I want to shift to 2 things that you've talked about, and I feel like it's well aligned to your compelling purpose of what should we create together. And that's the Adulting 101 for your graduating seniors, as well as the Lady Falcon Self-Defense program for your juniors and seniors. And I guess I'm interested to know what inspired those specific initiatives, although I get a sense that it came out of these conversations with your community.
We actually started the Lady Falcon Defense program prior to the adulting. The profiles of a graduate helped to just reinforce what we knew that we needed to help these kids for life in the real world. But I just sitting back watching these kids go off, knowing that we prepared them for reading and writing and math, but have we prepared them to go off and live in a new city if they're going to college or going to work? What tools are we giving them? And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the human trafficking rate, especially in Texas. But at one time, we were 2nd highest.
Is that right?
Yeah, it may still be. And there's so many women that go missing every single weekend. And so I'm learning about this and taking trainings on human trafficking and realizing we are sending these young girls out into the world. And now with online dating, the way that they meet new people, it's pretty scary. So I partnered with a local agency, Gladiator Defense, and they do a lot of self-defense training. And they came in and they worked with my junior and senior girls. They taught them how to be self-aware, situational awareness. When you go to the mall or you go out to eat, what to look for, what to think about. They teach them if somebody does try to attack them, they give them skills to try to prevent that from happening. And these girls actually, they learn a lot of strong moves and even to the point of how to break out of zip ties and duct tape. They get to practice these things and know that they can. So I see young girls, young junior and senior girls who are teeny tiny, 90 pounds, no confidence, go into this training and at the end of the day, be proud of themselves.
I imagine physically that they are learning as well as how to be assertive.
Yes.
With their words as well.
Yes, absolutely. After we did the first round, though, this is something I'd like to continue. So every other school year, we bring our junior and senior girls in, and it's just the girls. They're not so shy. They're more comfortable with each other. And I usually put in a couple of female adults who could use the training too. Everybody could use that training. And that's one day. And it is one day that we set aside that I think is worth it to possibly protect 20 girls for the rest of their lives.
That is amazing. Where I was in Columbia, Missouri is where the Interstate Highway 70 met 63. It was the center of the country. So a lot of traffic comes through. And
Yes.
we were routinely working with local authorities to be on the lookout for sex trafficking, drugs, guns. But I don't think we took that next step to really think about what kind of training might we want to provide universally so that kids could either, if they were in that situation, or could be an ally for others who find themselves in a situation like that. Kudos to you and your team. That is amazing.
Thank you. So the Adulting 101 came after
Yeah.
that. Then
Okay.
my brain is just, I can't stop and think, what else do they need? What did I need when I graduated? I didn't know much about income tax or how to change a tire or vehicle maintenance, how to tie a tie, how to professionally act in an interview. So those are the kind of skills we give our students. It's a very busy world now, and not everybody has the time to teach those things at home. So we are able, towards senior year, we set some time aside, an hour here, an hour there, and pull the kids in and teach them a skill. We have community members who come in and provide mock interviews, and it's a team effort across the board.
I love it. Do you use examples and non-examples? I can imagine a kid on their phone while they're interviewing and they get a
Right.
ping and then they look at, they're trying to answer. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's amazing. That's really great work. I'd like to ask you a question that I ask all guests who come on the show. How does the term an imperfect leader resonate for you?
I think that it's the definition of Mandy Traylor, actually. If you're in a world where everything's going as planned all the time, are you in education? I don't think so. Because we're dealing with so many people every day and so many different lives, and you just have to be able to go with the flow and know that, you know what, it's not always going to go great, and there's going to be mistakes, and you learn from those. That's how you get better. So an imperfect leader, to me, it's someone who leads with confidence, but is comfortable in their own skin to lead the masses and admit, hey, I messed up. We're going to learn from that. And someone who's empathetic and takes care of their people. That's what a good leader is.
So I want to talk a minute about the Mosaic Project. It is one of our favorite organizations and has over 25 years of experience empowering students to really celebrate differences, communicate assertively, and resolve conflict peacefully at their outdoor school. I happen to have experience being part of the Mosaic Project, and so I can absolutely tell you it's an amazing organization. Their innovative SEL curriculum is now available to our Imperfect Leader audience. And so you can get a 10% discount through their new documentary film-based Mosaic Classroom Project. So just let the people know during your onboarding process to receive that 10% discount is to just mention An Imperfect Leader. Learn more about the Mosaic Project at mosaicproject.org.
This is Greg Meyer, Jamie's partner at APC Leadership Collaborative. Superintendents know that school principals are the single biggest lever that any school district has for improving student joy and success. Unfortunately, there's very little professional development for the specific things that a principal has to do to improve their school. At APC Leadership Collaborative, we specialize in coaching principals to take on audacious goals, build their leadership skills, and make big improvements in their school. If that inspires you, let's connect and talk about how we can collaborate. Find APC Leadership Collaborative online at apccolab.com.
When leaders think in systems, they think differently. They see the big picture, making decisions that create coherence and strengthen communication across their teams. They build adaptability, flexibility, and engagement. Every day, school leaders face complex challenges, from student engagement to staff alignment. What if your team could see those challenges as part of a bigger picture? That's what happens when you think in systems. It's how leaders turn complexity into connection and challenges into opportunities for growth. At the Waters Center for Systems Thinking, we help educators and organizations build this capacity, developing the habits and tools that turn vision into action. Think differently, think in systems. Sign up for our webinars, free resources, or a consultation by visiting our website, which you can find in the show notes.
We're back for two of An Imperfect Leader called Imperfect Leadership in After Action. And my guest today is Mandy Traylor, the superintendent of the Veribest Independent School District in Veribest, Texas. And in this segment, we ask our guests, just like we do each week, to deconstruct a decision they made, and then what do they learn from it? Mandy, what happened?
It was last year, the 24-25 school year, and the second week of school. You think everything's going great. Kids' schedules are set. Teachers are rocking and rolling, and all of a sudden something happens that just throws a hitch in everything. I had a teacher who was struggling personally, and we were aware, because who doesn't? have something they struggle with once in a while. But I wasn't quite aware of the extent to how it was affecting school. Anyway, it was a Friday, the Friday before Labor Day. And of course, if anything crazy is going to happen, it's going to happen on a Friday. And I was here alone, except for my assistant principal was here. And my assistant principal had been a principal all of 2 weeks. He had just started. Now, he had been teaching here. He had been promoted, but admin was new to him. Our other administrators were off working volleyball games because it was a Friday in the fall. We were spread out everywhere. And we were getting reports that our friend was struggling and just not making good choices that day. And I don't want to go into a lot of details, but we had to make some decisions really fast. We had to immediately begin investigating, find out what happened, where it happened, all of the things. And we ended up having to send that friend home permanently. So what the hardest part was of the day is this wasn't just something I was dealing with. This was something that affected everyone, the entire high school. Some of them,
There's such a ripple effect, isn't there?
domino effect. So we were dealing with lots of emotions at the time, and I knew it was going to be very hard. So we had 3 days, because Labor Day weekend, to make some decisions. And I told you previously, I have a dynamite admin team, and they all jumped up to bat. My counselor started working on the master schedule because this friend didn't teach one subject. They taught multiple preps. So we had some tweaking to do. My principal started searching certifications on the staff, posted the job, but I'm not sure what it's like in the other states, but they're not exactly lining up at the door to come teach for you the 1st of September.
No, and typically it is either you're lucky that somebody had to relocate with their family and they're looking for a job. That's the greatest luck.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's not usually what happens. And so you may be finding people who were not necessarily successful in their previous jobs and they're eligible and they're willing, but maybe they're not the best for you.
Exactly. And I am very protective of my people. So the fact that we just lost somebody very abruptly did not leave me in a good place to just welcome anyone in either. But we did, because you never know. You're right. You never know what's going to come. I spent the weekend visiting with lawyers. What do we do? How do we handle this? Preparing for the next week. But my biggest concern was meeting with my staff and meeting with my students, because when you have multiple preps, that means other people are going to have to pick up that load. The first thing we did was bring the teachers in who we had identified as people who could help, who could at least support us in some way, figure this out until we really knew what we were doing from then on. And I was a little nervous. I have the best people, but that's a big ask. Hey, you've already got your schedule set, but guess what we're going to have to do? I could not have been prouder of my team. They immediately stepped up. What can we do for you? Absolutely, we will help. This is not a problem. My principal and counselor had worked in the background to make sure that we had online resources that would help, because not everyone can teach those subjects in high school. But everybody came together as a team. And it was in that moment, I always knew I had good people, and I always knew I had a good team. But boy, was I thankful that day.
Yeah.
Boy, and it really resonated what I had. And it was all hands on deck. No one was left behind. And we got a game plan right there together. Everyone knew their new assignments, who they would have. Now we had to talk to the kids. So I called all of the high school kids, about 75 of them, into our gymnasium. And I'm a firm believer. You talk to kids just like you would anybody. You just need to tell them straight up that this person is having some personal issues, and we care very much about that person, but we have to continue on. And it was a room full of different emotions, because we had some who were very frustrated by behaviors that day and were perfectly fine. See you later. And we had some who were heartbroken because
They had a relationship.
They had a relationship, and that person meant a whole lot to them. So lots of tears, and some who had no clue what I was talking about.
Oh my gosh, Mandy, I once had to show up at a middle school, because our board policy, state law, required that if something happened at a school, you had to bring something major happened at a school. You had to bring the entire faculty together and talk about it, but not talk about it. So you had to give information, but not enough that would really explicitly say what had happened, but just to acknowledge something had happened. And I can remember getting a text from a teacher later on going, most of us had no idea what you're talking about. I was like, I know. Trying to honor and value the privacy of that individual, and while at the same time making you aware that we know and are doing something.
Yeah. At the same time, in a small community, it's best if you can address everyone at once, because it prevents stories from getting twisted, information from changing.
Right. People writing their own story or narrative of what happened. Yeah.
Just everyone's going to hear it from me. This is what we're doing. And my kids listened, and I told them, we can't stop. We have to go forward. So we have to make these changes, and it's going to be okay. And we really just need to keep that person in our thoughts and prayers, because we all want everyone to just have the best.
I have an obligation. My first is to keep you safe. And
Yes.
your job's to help me do that. And this is, you're being human. And there are no good words, and there's no planned script for it, which is why you have to be so human in that moment. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. You're completely ad-libbing, hoping you say the right thing. And there's that imperfect leader, because do we always say the right thing? No, but we really hope we are.
Right.
And we got through it.
So I'd like to explore some of the questions that we typically go through in this podcast. So you've told me what happened in terms of a member of your staff and having to separate employment, and then having to lean on, and boy, they provided you strong shoulder to lean on, your own teachers and admin, and figuring out how to support children, then going to children and talking to them as real people, not children that you need to protect or to patronize, but rather to say, we're a community, and so you ought to know this as well. When you look back on this, it sounds like so many things went well. There's always a part where you feel like, I overlooked that, or it was overlooked. What would you say was overlooked in that process?
It had to have been the signs prior to the day. You know how it is going back to school. Everyone's so busy, and the schedules are tight. You're helping everyone. And I think maybe if we'd been a little more aware, we knew there were issues, but were there issues at school? Because most people separate home from work. And I think what I learned from it is, in the future, I need to be more proactive. If somebody is struggling, I need to really stay on top of that.
Gotcha. So they're exhibiting, this is not a pattern of behavior that we're used to. How can I maybe intervene now so that, that's interesting. That's a really profound reflection. When you are looking back on what did you learn about relationships, or what new relationships were formed, clearly you saw this relationship with your team. It's one thing to say they're the best. You have actions to look at to say, no, they really are the best.
Right.
I'm wondering, what else did you learn about relationships in that moment?
I think I realized what a vital impact everyone here has on someone else. Because sitting with all of those kids and seeing the ones that teared up and seeing the ones that had, so much invested, it was really just a reminder. That's why you come to school every day. You come to school to take care of these kids, but impact lives for the better.
Yeah. Connection.
Yes.
Yeah. They come for connection. They come for learning, and why do they come through the door each day? It's not for math class, unless you're that special math student.
Right.
It's for the connection to adults and peers.
Yes, absolutely. So I do have the best team. And I know that someone else could argue that with me. But what I saw that day, because you know how lonely it is at the top. This was a major deal. And you don't really know where it's going to go once you walk out your door and go face it head on. And to see my group come together the way that they did to embrace more work. And I am a firm believer. I made sure there were stipends involved in all the things, but they weren't worried about that.
Right.
They just wanted to help. And my motto has always been work hard and be nice to people. That's all I expect of anybody, my adults, my kids, work hard and be nice to people. And my goodness, if that's not what they do every day, I'm very proud.
When you look back on something that was good that came out of this experience, obviously those who are listening are like, are you listening to Mandy? It is the piece about the team really coming together and gelling. I'm curious because this is a relatively new experience for you. If it was last year and I'm curious, you've indicated sort of this, I'd like to be able to think about my systems that I put into place and how to look for those who might be struggling as the school year is starting again and intervene before it becomes a big issue. And I'm curious just how has that looked, or what are some ways that you're doing that?
Just making sure that I'm having more conversations.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And making sure my admin team are checking on their people as well. I can't be everywhere all the time.
No, you can't. And leaders can't.
No, we can't. But if I'm taking care of my admin team and we are all taking care of our teachers or taking care of our students, we have a fantastic pyramid of care happening.
Yeah, I love it. Basically, you're saying, I need to model taking care of my immediate team because then I know that they will take those steps to look after their people that they're responsible for. And then throughout the system is this care. And then, as you said, work hard and be nice. It's about working hard and not forgetting the be nice part, because be nice, I imagine, includes taking care of people.
Taking care of people. That's how I interpret it. And having that major building project, that takes a lot of time, especially when you're the superintendent and there's not an assistant. So I definitely know that I am going to have a lot more time to work on those skills.
Love it. What advice would you give to an aspiring leader?
The best advice I have for an aspiring leader is do not move fences until you know why they were built.
Ooh, say more, but I love that.
Do not move fences. Don't go in your first year thinking you're going to change everything and make it better. You need to understand the culture. You need to understand the why. You need to know why things were put into place. And then once you've built those relationships and you've made those connections and you do understand your community, then you can start working to make effective changes. People will buy into you when you take the time to build a relationship first.
We talk a lot about getting a beat on the system. You've said it even better, which is don't move fences until you know why they were put in place in the first place. Really getting to know a community's history, because you're just a new person. So understanding why things are done. Oh, I love that. Our guest today was Mandy Traylor, the superintendent of the Veribest Independent School District in Veribest, Texas. And one of the things I wrote down as you were talking was a mantra that we had in terms of talking about our purpose. We would say, we're preparing children for an unpredictable and ever-changing world. And you have not only done that so well in Veribest, you've taken out the unpredictable to make it a little bit more predictable with those innovative programs of supporting and preparing children, and then really defining what it looks like to be college, career, life, or community ready. And I'm just so pleased and so grateful for your time. Thank you so much, Mandy.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Welcome back. First of all, can I ask one quick general question? How did you get connected to Mandy Traylor?
Yeah, so you may have heard me during the beginning of the conversation. I thank Andrew Murata. He's a whole lot of Murata. Yeah. So he's from Staten Island originally. He and I became friendly. He's got a podcast as well, and we've stayed in touch. And when he meets somebody he thinks is interesting and engaging, he'll say to me like, "Oh, you got to meet Mandy." And there'll be like a texting thread. I don't have a choice. I'm meeting Mandy because he is. You think I'm a lot of New York? This guy is like all in it. He's wonderful and he's talented and he's a motivational speaker. He used to be a NCAA Division I ref, and he's also a principal. And so he gets it. He knows how to motivate people. And Mandy loved him. I think the world of him. And he introduced me to Mandy, and we went from there.
Got it. I thought I got two things to open, and then I think are really just interesting. How the heck, Elle, did you in Columbia have the mascot a Cupid doll? What the heck?
Oh,
How did that happen?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at the QP history. They have it online. But my understanding is there was the basketball team was doing poorly, and the secretary at Hickman High School decided to put a Cupid doll at like midcourt, and it defied all odds that nobody ever kicked it over, and the Cupies or the Hickman team won. And then it took off. That's how I understand it.
Well, it's the uniqueness of it. I love when mascots are like that. Like I think Wake Forest Demon Deacons are spectacular. That's a great idea.
Let me interrupt to say that typically we wait to the end where we say, hey, give us 5 stars. And if you got something to say in the comments, please what's your mascot? Like, beat the Cupid. I want to know. What's your mascot?
Oh, the people are going to beat the Cupid, or at least tie the Cupid.
No, I do trainings all the time, and I bring stickers from Bainbridge Island that say Birth of Pickleball, because that's our claim to fame here on Bainbridge. And I'll say, all right, we're going to have a competition. You're going to tell me your mascot, and I'm going to tell you mine. And if I lose, I'm going to give you a gift. And I have to give out stickers to everybody, because they're like, oh, we're the Bruins, we're the Tigers, we're the Hornets, we're the
none of that. No,
I'm waiting for someone to be like, bowl of spaghetti. We're the bolognese. Like, oh, we win.
So, side note, I don't know if you'll keep this in the podcast, but all of the push on eliminating indigenous mascots, right? My identity is not a mascot. Which, yes, exactly. One of the pushbacks from a native school on a reservation was they renamed their mascot to be the Fighting Whiteys. And the Fighting Whiteys were a businessman in a suit with a briefcase running, running. I think that is a
hilarious. I need a link to that. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
It's pretty good. And of course, there was a lot of pushback and anger and, oh, no, you can't do that. That's racist. Yeah, okay. Let's talk about the Portrait of a Grad thing and how that led into Adulting 101. And the thing about the concept of Adulting 101, first, it just made me ask, what would you include? If you were putting together an Adulting 101 program for students that wasn't a part of the electives choices that you had, or that the academics didn't necessarily prepare them, what would you include in an Adulting 101?
That's really interesting. For example, because I think about her quote in terms of we're helping kids for life in the real world. And you have all these states that are passing legislation, I think for good reason, in terms of financial literacy and things like that. However, they're taking the approach, the way I interpret it, is to say, you don't need a full core. Like, we're going to incorporate all of these elements into preparing kids for life. And so I thought that was interesting. I would say, when I'm thinking about these things, I would say not just certain skills, but experiences, because I think you learn teaching isolated skills it isn't necessarily preparing you for life, but participating in experiences. So, for example, those schools that require volunteerism to graduate, a certain number of volunteer hours, because then you're learning the skills of arriving on time, being responsible for something, having clients or people you're responsible to, knowing how to dress, how to keep your phone away, how to deal with conflict, how to talk with the supervisor, how to receive feedback. All those kinds of things are important skills for ready for life. But I would see it as like you're required to have some of these experiences. And it's probably why I feel so strongly about once you graduate, why a liberal arts education makes so much sense to me as well. Because you should take arts, performing arts and arts courses. You should have to know how to read literature and think about its place in history and what was happening at that time. Because it's not just those individual skills, but the actual experience of it all. So I think that's how I would answer your question. What people don't know is that you don't tell me ahead of time what you're going to ask me. So I'm just like, let me think about this. But I still stay pretty secure in fewer individual discrete skills and more about experience with maybe, even if you needed to, a checklist of here are the skills that I would want you to learn while you're doing it.
You don't know the questions that I'm going to ask in advance. We both listen to the interview and think about what we want to talk about. Then we come and have an organic conversation, which I think is one of my favorite things about this together. And you always answer relatively quickly. So that's pretty impressive. The question that you had,
chief storyteller, right? Quick thinker. I would say though, like they did income tax work. Like I knew nothing about that stuff. I knew nothing about it. All of a sudden I got my first internship in New York City my summer before going to college. And I'm like, what are dependents? Why are they taking all this money out? What is this for?
What it made me think of was Mandy referenced, what did I need to learn? What are the things I didn't know going in? And instantly my coach brain clicked in and was like, oh, you don't matter. How you thought of it doesn't matter. What matters is the students. And so that's what I would do. I would probably start with, what do you as students see as something that adults have to do that you are like, I don't even know what that is.
That is I like that answer as well. I would say a combination of the two, because sometimes they don't even know what they don't know.
Oh, agreed.
And at the same time, there are things that are on their minds that they're right now looking at, reels, stories, TikTok, whatever they're looking at, and they're trying to make sense of the world. And they would appreciate having some time to say, hey, I don't even know what this is. Like, how do I do this?
Yeah. How do you do that? How do you what's that? How do you get in it? What's an internship? How do you do that? Do they pay you or do they not pay you? I'd love to see what students would say.
My son wanted to apply for a job down at the pizza shop just down the street here to be a dishwasher. And so he didn't know what to do. And he went, so I'm like, you got to go in there and ask for an application. So he asked for an application. He came back home and he filled it out in pencil. I'm like, holy crap. Like, you're not getting this job. He's like, I just want to be a dishwasher. What do I care if I do it in pencil? You're also not going to get this job because you're fairly combative. What are you doing? And then he asks me to turn it in for him. I'm like, you're the one asking for the job. But I want to talk to people. You're going to have to talk to people at the job. I don't have to talk to them if I'm cleaning their dishes. I'm like, buddy. So he finally turns it in. And then, of course, they don't call him because I'm sure they were like, what the hell is this piece of garbage?
Oh,
he needs Mandy's course is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but Mandy's course, it depends on whether Mandy course is going to teach it to him and to use a pen. That's a question mark.
The direct quote is, I didn't know much about income tax, how to change a tire, vehicle maintenance, how to tie a tie, how to professionally act in an interview. So those are the kinds of skills we give our students.
I'd be interested to see too.
Youngest steepleman would like to enroll in Veribest for just that course.
Can we talk a little bit about the after action review? I want to just take one more moment to mention her after action review, which in some ways wasn't really. She basically talked about how they managed letting someone go at the last minute, and it's not so much the after action, like what could have been done differently. I think her reflection on that is decent. It's good. It's that she realized that she has to have more connection and conversation with people up front. But the thing that I really thought was interesting that both of you didn't go into too deeply was the ripple effect, that you let someone go, no matter when during the year, that there's gonna be a ripple effect because people know people and that person matters to someone. And so I'm interested to know your experience with that. I have my own personal experience having let someone go, and I'm happy to share that story. But what have you noticed about the concept of the ripple effect?
Let me also just remind, and not that I need to remind our listeners because they know this, when you let a teacher go, someone who's on contract, they're still with you for the next 4 months or so. You have to let them know by March or something like that. And then they're with you the rest of March, April, May, June. And that is the most uncomfortable time because they do have friends within the school who have maybe never seen them teach and don't know about their relationship with kids. They just enjoy them as people. And they cannot believe how unfair it is that their friend has been non-hired, non-renewed, or that you're going to separate. And so that's really difficult. So you talk about a ripple effect, super big ripple effect, particularly you don't get to say anything. You can't say anything. And yet that doesn't necessarily stop the employee who's leaving from telling parents, I can't believe how unfair this was. You have no idea how disrespected I was. You know how much I love your kids and I come to their baseball game or whatever. And they're like, and they start to rally. So the ripple effect is real and it's difficult and it's different. Over the last 5 years now, I've been coaching or working with private companies who they may separate with someone and it's immediate. Like your last day is today. And, and of course we'll pay you out for the next couple of months, but you're done. And then that's it. Shut off the email and everything. Done.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also difficult. But I would say from the perspective of the ripple effect, it's massive. And it's so costly too to have to rehire people. So you really try your very best not to have to fire people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like sometimes it's just inevitable and you just can't right the ship. and you've tried everything you possibly can. And I think
Yeah.
I've told you in the past about the mistake I've made in the past is that someone who's struggling, and then I would assign 3 different coaches who are giving them 3 different pieces of advice. And it's just so overwhelming for that individual. And like the intent was, oh, I care so deeply for your success. I want you to have all these great people. And the result is you overwhelmed me so much, I didn't know who to listen to, and nothing got better.
That's a great reflection. I love that reflection. Mine was, we're a small organization, and it really highlights something that we actually do in facilitation and understanding group dynamics. And that is that when someone in the group, either you add a person or you subtract a person from the group, the entire group dynamic goes back to 0. It doesn't maintain. You don't have all that culture building you're doing doesn't just keep going, because you actually have to redo a bunch of things merely because that one person is
right. No, that's a really good case. So the example of someone who like drove drunk onto the school playground, and everyone's like, that person needs to go.
Right.
And that person goes, and you can keep, and it was a good example of us living our values. You can't do that here. Let's keep moving. You don't want that, obviously, but you also understand how you can keep, you're like, oh, this person or these actions disrupted our cultural field, but our field is so strong, we reject that behavior and say, you can't do that here. You won't work here. The problem is, the example you're giving and the one that I've lived is nobody really, you say we're going to live these values and you're living it individually, but the rest of the organization doesn't understand it. You can't provide them the clarity that they crave. And you have to like back all the way up and in some cases it's rebuild that trust that, and at some point people will come around and say, hey, look, I didn't know all the information. I don't have all the facts, but we're ready to rebuild, but it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time. The impact on ours, without even realizing it, we let someone go, and this was not performance related. It was merely budget related. We are short on budget, and we have to make a cut. And what I didn't realize in making the cut was the unnamed cultural field that this person brought to the collective cultural field of the group. And the way I've described it most consistently is he made everyone on our team feel funny, feel like they were funny. He was
not feel funny, uncomfortable, funny in that they were
amusing. They were witty, that they were quick-witted and smart. And so he basically was the person who laughed at everybody's jokes, everybody's. And so we all feel like we're totally getting along and we're really vibing, and everybody's, oh, this is so fun. This is so fun. He's let go. He leaves. The rest of us, we actually don't have the same sense of humor at all. None of us. And suddenly there is no funny because everybody's telling a joke and none of the other people laugh. And we're like, what happened? Where is the fun?
Derek thought we were funny. Yeah. I don't know.
And I didn't realize. And that took culture building again. We had to build not around this sort of witty banter that we thought we had, but rather now a new cultural identity in terms of being a team that wasn't in the same space. He made it easy to do this other one, and it was gone. I thought that was such a fascinating psychological change that happens as a result of letting someone go. And that's the ripple effect that.
Yep. Yeah. So it's possible that Mandy and I didn't talk about it more directly because I think so many of the leaders who listen understand what that ripple effect is. And it's why sometimes they're like, why didn't you part ways with this person? They're not great. And you're like, because I know the consequence of parting ways and it's worse.
Yeah.
It's worse.
Yeah. Anyway.
And so can I share 3 things that really stuck out for me?
Oh, please.
Well, I mean, the first is just in terms of she had this opportunity. You alluded to it before we went into the conversation about this opportunity to engage her community at large in terms of, and I thought that was just such important and good work. And it's often overlooked. You do a lot of this sort of, what is the profile of a graduate need to look like? And you look internally and you do talk to kids and you talk with your teachers and your counselors. And she took the opportunity to really expand that conversation out to her community. So I thought that was awesome. The next were her 2 sort of mottos. One is, she says, my motto has always been to work hard and be nice to people. And I was like, done. Like that. And she goes, that's all I expect of anybody. If I'm taking care of my admin team and we're taking care of our teachers, we're taking care of our students, then you've got a fantastic pyramid of care happening. I was like, oh my God, I hope that she's like creating like, I don't know, marketing materials about pyramid of care. I love it. The second or the third point that I wanted to make was something that, as I announced last week, and this opportunity that I have to go to Cartagena, Colombia, and work at Colegio Jorge Washington, was the advice of do not move fences until you know why they were built.
Oh, I love that too. Yeah.
People will buy into you when you take the time to build a relationship first. And I was like, oh, I got to make that like a poster also. Don't move these fences. And it was so Texas, right? Don't move these fences until you know why they were put up, right? I'm like,
Yeah, man. That one I thought was exactly dead on. Like, don't move anybody's fences. Don't move those things because you don't know anything about it. This is don't give advice and people aren't asking for it.
Ooh.
Nobody asked you. They don't need your help. In fact, you've just wasted your best advice. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I'm always fascinated at the uniqueness of the small district and the perspective of a tiny district like that. I'm a superintendent leading a tiny district like that. So that was a lot of fun.
They are the most inspiring and inspired superintendents. I'm telling you, they don't think it. She was like, are you sure you want to talk to me when I was first reached out to her?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, absolutely. And as you can see, she doesn't disappoint. All right. You've been listening to An Imperfect Leader, the Superintendents and Leadership Podcast. We will see you next week. Bye, Jamie.
We'll see you next week, Peter.